I never imagined the woman I once saw as the center of my life would one day look me in the eyes and tell me, with zero emotion, to just go. No yelling, no fight, no breakdown, just a quiet dismissal, like I was a guest who had overstayed his welcome. Her name is Natalie, and we were married for 4 years. Dated for 2 before that. At first, she was funny, sarcastic, passionate, a little unpredictable, but I thought that added flavor. I chalked it up to personality, not instability. I worked full-time as a civil engineer. She bounced around between jobs, tried to figure herself out. I was steady, consistent. I liked being the calm in the room. She liked being the storm. For a long time, we made it work. Or at least I thought we did. Things started changing about a year ago, and slowly, like background noise, getting louder. First it was the eye rolls, then the late nights, then the phone that never left her hand. We stopped talking. Not in the dramatic door slamming kind of way, but in that slow decay kind of way. Like two people living in the same house with different time zones. I tried. I suggested counseling. She said I was being dramatic. I cooked for her. She'd scroll on her phone through dinner. I'd compliment her. She'd shrug it off or say thanks without looking up. If I asked for intimacy, she'd pull away or say she was tired. Eventually, I stopped asking, but I still stayed. Because I loved her. Because I believe in fighting for something you built. Because that's what I saw my dad do when things got tough with my mom. Show up, be present, hold the line. Then, one Friday night, everything changed. It was early fall. I had just come home from work, exhausted, still in my work boots, dust on my pants, and I walked into the apartment to find her sitting on the couch, makeup done, wearing one of those black tops she used to wear when we first dated. I smiled and said, "Date night?" She didn't smile back. She muted the TV and looked straight at me. "Ryan, I think you should stay somewhere else for a while." Just like that. No preamble. No emotion. I stood there for a second, thinking she was joking. "What are you talking about?" "I need space," she said, still calm. "This isn't working. You're not exciting anymore." Exciting. Like I was a theme park ride that had gotten too slow. I asked her if there was someone else. She said no. I asked her if she wanted a divorce. She said, "Not yet." I asked her where she expected me to go. She said, "You'll figure it out." I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I just walked in the bedroom, took a duffel bag, grabbed what I needed for a few nights, a couple of shirts, chargers, toothbrush, and left. I remember the door closing behind me, like it was the sound of my life splitting in two. I drove to a motel off Route 29, one of those cheap ones with flickering lights and thin walls where you hear every truck pass by. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my work clothes, and stared at the floor for maybe 2 hours. No calls, no texts, nothing. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside felt like a hammer in my head. I kept replaying what happened in my mind. Her expression, so casual, like she was ending a business contract, like I was replaceable. I thought of all the times I had her back, paid her student loans, let her use my car when hers broke down, helped her cover rent when she was between jobs, took care of her when she got that awful flu and couldn't get out of bed, held her when she cried after her dad's heart surgery. None of it mattered now. None of it bought me even a little bit of grace. I was out, just like that. The next few days were a blur. I texted her once, just to ask if she needed anything from me financially while I figured things out. She didn't reply. I stayed at the motel for 5 nights. Then a buddy from work, Paul, offered me his basement for a couple weeks while I got my footing. I took it. And while I lived down there, in that unfinished room with boxes and laundry detergent smell and an old air mattress that squeaked every time I moved, I started doing something I hadn't done in a long time. I started thinking about myself. Because here's the truth. I had lost myself in that marriage. I had spent years trying to be the dependable guy, the one who holds it together. I never stopped to ask if I was actually happy. I just kept showing up, hoping she'd come back to me emotionally. She never did. One night, maybe a week later, I got a text from her younger sister, Jenna. It said, "Hey, I heard what happened. I'm sorry. I don't agree with how she handled it." Jenna and I had always gotten along. She was younger, more grounded than Natalie. We had inside jokes, shared playlists, talked about movies. It had always been innocent. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime, just to talk, not to make it weird. At first, I wasn't sure. But then I thought, Why not? At least someone saw me as human. We met up 2 days later at a little spot downtown. The conversation was easy, natural. She didn't ask for details, just listened. And when I told her how numb I felt, how discarded I felt, she just said, "You deserve better." I always thought that. I just never said it. Something shifted in me that day. A crack of sunlight through the clouds. I wasn't looking to move on. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I was just trying to feel like a person again. And for the first time in months, someone actually made me feel that. Meanwhile, Natalie stayed silent. No apology. No check-in. Not even curiosity about where I ended up. I had become a stranger to the woman who once called me her whole world. And that's what this part of the story is about. Not the twist that comes later. Not the part where things flip. This is about what it does to a man when the woman he gave everything to looks at him and says, "Leave." No tears. No hesitation. Just go. And when I finally did, she had no idea what she'd lose. But she was about to find out. I wasn't looking for anything when I met up with Jenna that day. I wasn't thinking about women, romance, or even comfort. I was just tired. Tired of feeling like I didn't exist. Tired of pretending to be okay. And Jenna, she was someone who, for some reason, never made me feel like I had to perform. We met at a small cafe downtown. The kind of place with chipped mugs and 90s music playing a little too loud. I was early, she was a little late, but when she walked in, I remember she smiled in that soft, almost apologetic way. Like she wasn't sure I even wanted her there. And honestly, I didn't know either. But the moment we started talking, it just flowed. There was no judgment in her eyes. No pity either. Just presence. Just someone who saw me, not as Natalie's ex or some pathetic guy in hiding, but as Ryan. We talked about everything but the situation at first. Music, movies, how work was going for her. She was a graphic designer freelancing for a few fashion brands. Always had a creative streak. I used to admire that about her. She never followed the crowd. Always moved with her own rhythm. Eventually, we did talk about Natalie. I kept it light. I didn't go into the messages or the humiliation, just said things hadn't been right for a long time. Jenna sipped her coffee, looked at me for a second, and said something that stuck with me. I used to ask her why she treated you the way she did. You were always there, and it's like she resented that. That line hit harder than I expected. She went on to say she'd noticed things for years, the way Natalie talked down to me, dismissed my opinions, made fun of my habits. At first I thought it was just sister banter, she admitted. But over time it just got cruel. I didn't know what to say to that. On one hand, it validated what I'd been feeling. On the other, it stung to realize how visible it had all been. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being dramatic. People saw it. They just never said anything, until now. We stayed at that cafe for almost 2 hours. By the end of it, I felt lighter. Not fixed, not healed, but seen. That alone meant everything. After that, we kept in touch. Nothing inappropriate. She'd check in on me with a text. "You eat today?" Or send me memes, random photos of her dog, or even just thinking of you type messages. They were small things, but they mattered. In a time where I felt disposable, Jenna made me feel human. One night, about a month after our coffee, she invited me over to her apartment. "Homemade pizza and wine," she said. I didn't ask questions. I just said yes. I remember standing outside her door with a bottle of wine. I barely knew how to choose. My palms were sweating like I was on a first date. But it wasn't like that. At least not yet. It was comfort, familiarity, something warm in a world that had gone cold. She opened the door barefoot, wearing a hoodie and leggings, hair tied up, and smiled like I'd been there 100 times before. It was disarming. The way she let the guard down without even trying. We cooked. We talked. We laughed. And somewhere between the second slice of pizza and the second glass of wine, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in months. Ease. Not just physical comfort, but emotional safety. After dinner, we sat on the couch. Some old comedy played on the TV, but neither of us were really watching. At one point, she looked at me and said softly, "You didn't deserve what she did. I hope you know that." I nodded, but I didn't respond right away. Then I said the truth. I think a part of me started believing I did. That's when she leaned over and hugged me. Not a light, polite hug. A full one, like she meant it. her arms around me, her face against my chest. It was the first time someone had touched me with kindness in what felt like forever. And I broke. Not with tears, not with words, just silence. I let her hold me, and I held her back. That hug said more than anything either of us could have expressed out loud. Eventually, she pulled away slightly, looked up at me, and I swear to you, it just happened. No planning, no build-up, just a kiss. It was slow, gentle, like a question being asked. And I answered it. We didn't rush anything that night. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't some angry rebound or scandalous fling. It was relief, recognition, like two people who had been watching each other from across a storm, finally stepping into the same calm. We spent the night together, and for the first time in over a year, I fell asleep next to someone and didn't feel alone. Over the next few days, things got more complicated, not between us, but in our heads. We talked openly about how this couldn't become gossip, how Natalie would react if she ever found out. We weren't naive. We knew what we were doing would wreck her ego. But here's the thing no one ever talks about. Sometimes the deepest connections are born out of shared survival. Jenna had always lived in Natalie's shadow. She had always been the little sister, the one who got overlooked or compared or minimized. And I had always been the husband who wasn't enough, the one who was mocked behind his back. We weren't looking for revenge. We found comfort, validation, safety. We found each other in the ashes of what her sister destroyed. Still, we kept it quiet. For a while, I kept living in Paul's basement. Jenna would visit sometimes, late at night, under the radar. We'd talk about everything, childhood, dreams, books, fears. I learned more about her in 2 weeks than I ever knew in the years I was married to her sister. And for the first time, I started imagining a different life. One where I wasn't constantly trying to earn love. One where I didn't have to shrink myself to keep the peace. One where I could just be and still be wanted. Then one afternoon, Natalie showed up at my job. Hair done, nails perfect, face calm, but her eyes tight. She asked to talk. We stepped outside. She looked me over like she was expecting a broken man. I said nothing. She finally spoke. So is it true? You're sleeping with Jenna? I paused, then said, You kicked me out, Natalie. What I do now isn't your business. She laughed. That bitter, ego-driven laugh. Wow. I knew she was pathetic, but this is disgusting. I didn't react. I just looked at her and said, She treats me better than you ever did. And with that, I walked away. She stood there stunned, not because I said something cruel, but because I didn't beg to be understood. I never wanted to get even. Let me start by saying that what happened between me and Jenna wasn't part of a plan. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't some sick game to make Natalie suffer. In fact, for a while, I thought Natalie might never even know. I was fine with that. I had no desire to rub it in her face. I was finally free, emotionally, mentally, and I wasn't going to waste my peace on trying to prove a point. But peace has a funny way of exposing people. After I left the house, after I quietly started over and stopped chasing the woman who had once been my whole world, Natalie stayed silent for a while. Not a text, not a call, not a single question about where I was or how I was doing. It was like she had erased me without hesitation until she found out about her sister. To this day, I don't know exactly how she found out. Maybe a cousin saw Jenna getting out of my truck. Maybe someone saw us at that diner on the edge of town where we weren't exactly hiding. Or maybe Jenna finally told her. But when the news reached Natalie, it hit her like a punch she never expected. The first message I got from her came on a random Wednesday afternoon. Natalie, you're seriously with my sister now? That's how little I meant to you. I read the message and just stared at it for a second. Part of me wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because the audacity was wild. She had thrown me out like old clothes, told me I was boring, that I wasn't exciting enough, that she needed space. She didn't check if I was okay, didn't ask if I had somewhere to sleep, didn't even send a single follow-up text after I left. But now I was worth texting because her ego was bruised. I didn't answer, and that silence drove her insane. The next day, another message. Longer. Natalie, you knew how complicated my relationship with her is. I can't believe you would stoop that low. Whatever you two think this is, it won't last. She's not who you think she is. You're just trying to hurt me. I didn't answer that one either. Because there's something incredibly powerful about not playing a game you didn't agree to in the first place. I wasn't interested in explaining myself to her. She didn't get access to that part of me anymore. Later that week, she called me. I let it ring. Then she sent a voice message, something she never used to do. Her voice was shaky. For the first time in months, I heard emotion. Not just irritation or sarcasm, but actual emotion. She said she was confused, hurt, blindsided, that she had made mistakes, but didn't think I'd ever go that far. She said I was cruel, said I should have had the decency to at least talk to her first. And I wanted to scream. Decency? I wanted to remind her of the night she stood in our living room and told me I wasn't exciting enough. The night she looked me dead in the face like I was some inconvenience she couldn't wait to remove from her life. The weeks I spent in a friend's dusty basement wondering how I'd become disposable. But I didn't scream. I didn't reply. Because the man she was texting, he wasn't the same one she threw out. That man had already buried himself and been reborn. About a week later, Jenna told me that Natalie showed up at her apartment unannounced. "Did you sleep with him?" she asked, right at the door. Jenna told me she didn't lie. She didn't play games. She just said, "Yes, and we don't owe you anything." Apparently, Natalie started crying right there. She didn't yell, didn't insult, just cried. And Jenna told me something interesting after that moment. She said, "I don't think she misses you, Ryan. I think she misses being the one you were willing to destroy yourself for." That stuck with me. Because it was true. Natalie wasn't reaching out because she wanted to rebuild anything. She didn't suddenly realize my value. She realized she lost her control. The backup plan. The quiet, dependable guy who kept showing up, even after being disrespected. The man who absorbed humiliation without retaliation. She didn't miss the marriage. She missed the power. Weeks passed. She kept trying. Messages turned softer. One said, "I've been thinking about us. About everything. I didn't mean to hurt you like I did. I don't know why I pushed you away. Maybe I was scared. I miss you, Ryan." That one almost got me. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted, but because I realized how many times I would have killed to hear those words during our marriage. When I was begging for her to open up. When I was dying in silence. When I was still fighting for something she'd already abandoned. But now, it was too late. I had outgrown the place where her love used to live inside me. I sent her one final message. Just this. "You taught me to stop caring." And I finally listened. She never replied again. Now here's the part no one sees. The part that doesn't make it into the dramatic stories. The quiet aftermath. The way your phone finally stops buzzing. The way your nights get peaceful. The way you stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You just breathe again. Jenna and I kept our connection going. Slowly. Honestly. We didn't rush into labels or make it a scandal. We just stayed close. Built something real. Whether it becomes forever or just a chapter, I'm grateful for it. Because she helped me remember that I wasn't unlovable. I wasn't a failure. I was just married to someone who needed to destroy me to feel powerful. And now, she's the one crying at night. Not because I hurt her, but because I didn't come back. Because she saw me walk away, for real, and never imagined I'd actually be okay without her. And I am. More than okay.